Welcome back. I was just about to ask Erin McClelland about one of the speeches I heard her say when she was talking about the mother in America.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what that, I mean, you're talking about yourself, obviously.
Well, no, not just me. I was talking about Katie McGinty and Hillary Clinton. I'm a young woman.
Katie McGinty is running for Senate of Pennsylvania. If you don't know who she is, Katie is full of character, full of spunk, just like you. She has that energy. How do you, I mean, we're used to having the white, aristocratic man.
Yeah.
Wears the suit like I am, who doesn't really do much. How do you change the mold?
You know, I think this is just a process of progress. You have 3 women at the top of the ticket in this district, and that's, you know, that may never happen again. I may never go into a voting booth again.
And it is rare. I mean, how many women, congresswomen are there?
We have none in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I know. Okay.
We've only had 7. 4 of those women took over for their deceased husbands, so we've only ever elected 3 women. And at any one time, we've only had 1.
So how do you feel if you win being an archetype for feminism? You ever thought of yourself that way?
No.
On the 60s
no,
burn?
I don't. I think of myself as an archetype for working class people because
Okay.
I identify more as a labor candidate than I do as a female candidate.
Okay.
My gender has never really come into play in how I do this. I mean, I happen to be a woman.
So how many children do you have?
1. I'm a 15-year-old.
Okay. So how would you balance the responsibility of being a 15-year-old's mother with school and PTA compared to going to DC and battling the president, whoever that is, and coming up with legislation?
Probably the same way Keith Rothfuss and Mark Kritz and all the men do it.
Okay. Babysitter. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more about this. I mean, I like the idea of we have all these women candidates.
Mm-hmm.
We don't see that that often.
No, you don't.
We usually see one woman, and she either has to be ostentatious or she's completely meek.
Yeah.
And you're not one of those. You are
Yeah.
outgoing, you're personable. Do you think Hillary's going to win?
I think she's going to win the election.
You do?
Yeah, I do. Unless something significant happens in the next month and a half. I think when you look at the numbers and how badly her opponent is doing with everything from the gay community to the African American community to women.
He trashes people.
Yeah, he
doesn't just trash
eviscerating.
issues, he literally picks people. I know when Trump came to Altoona, which is neighboring to Pittsburgh about 2 hours away, it was a huge turnout of support. There were critics who criticized Hillary for having fake protesters, fake supporters.
I was there. I was
going to ask you, I saw the
event.
picture. I know the mayor of Johnstown was there.
Yes.
Were they fake?
No, they were real. They were real steel workers.
It made front page of our paper. People were saying that she scripted it. She has no support.
No, the people, and most of the people that were there were big Democratic supporters. They're people that I've worked with, knew personally. They're part of the Democratic infrastructure in the Murtha machine down there. The steel workers that were there, I know those people.
The Murtha
Those
machine
were real people.
Was all about infrastructure and money. So if you became elected, are we going to see the Erin McClelland Highway?
I'm going to do my best to bring as much infrastructure in.
We have the Bud Schuster Highway. And how do you deal with a congressional district? Remember, neighboring to you is Bud Schuster. I just said his name.
Bill Schuster.
36 years, 35 years. How do you combat being a first-term freshman lawmaker when you're surrounded by all these lifetime people who may or may not welcome you?
I work like crazy in my district. I work on taking care of my constituents, returning phone calls, having town halls, hit this drug problem really, really hard, start supporting their efforts, see what they need, and deliver in using any resources that I have. I was a small business person who raised angel investment for a drug and alcohol treatment program that we started. So, it's not unusual for me to start looking at alternative resources to try and get the support that we need.
Now, I personally have a slight history with Keith Rothfuss. 2 years ago, we asked him to honor us with the 15th anniversary award, I guess, a letter. It took 6 months, and I had to threaten to protest him. He ended up writing us what is probably the most polite, nasty letter I think I've ever received from a lawmaker, basically telling us that he protected our rights under the First Amendment to ask for this, and he blessed us, but basically doesn't support us as a community. As the civil rights leader in Pennsylvania, who does a talk show, who advocates for freedom of speech, who does all these things, how do you respond to your contemporary opponent sending a nice, I don't want to swear and end up getting in front of the school board and go to jail, but this is what he said to us 2 years ago. This is, he acknowledges our 15-year anniversary. It's, I serve all these people, but I'm only doing this because it's freedom of speech and we threatened to protest.
So he literally didn't acknowledge your anniversary. He just said, thank you for informing me of it. He didn't say congratulations.
We're about to celebrate our 18th anniversary. We have thousands of members. I have been at the forefront of, I'm a scandal maker, I'm not going to lie.
Sure.
On Good Morning America yesterday for the freedom of speech lawsuit at the Johnstown School, and I continue to do these things. Should he be talking to his constituents this way? Obviously you wouldn't.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't. And honestly, if somebody from the pro-life community came to me and said, hey, we have an event.
Okay, pro-life,
pro-choice.
Okay.
But I've had some really great conversations with the people, the member of that community, because we have a lot in common. There's some things that we all want less abortion. So let's work on that. But
and we want to be heard.
Yeah.
Most people just want to be heard over there. Of course, they want you to agree.
Yeah. So if they were to contact me as a sitting member of Congress and say, we have an anniversary, or we have an event, or we have a dinner or a breakfast, and we love you, I would definitely show up. I would honor their views and their ideas and their goals. And their goals are good. It's to actually solve this issue and make abortion less and decrease them and get unplanned pregnancies down. And I agree with them on that. I think we disagree on the mechanism to get there, but we all agree on the goal. So, I mean, when I look at something like this is kind of a slap in the face. I mean, I'm reading it, and it's kind of offensive.
I laughed at this, Keith, if you're watching. I appreciated it for what it was worth. I take it in the spirit with which you wrote it. Drake wrote it. I know that in this country we talk about terrorism, and it's a horribly large, big topic. I know, putting you on the spot for one big word. We have ISIS. We have issues going on in the Middle East. You're going to be a congresswoman if you win.
Yeah.
I know you can't say it all in 5 minutes, but what do you think of this? It's a crisis, is it?
Yeah, I would.
So would you alert more funding to it? Would you take funding away from defense? What are you going to do? People are going to be asking you, if you get elected, what's your platform?
Well, so Congress is the power of the purse when it comes to foreign policy, but we're really at the discretion of the president. The president's the one that sets foreign policy. Okay. So, and they also have access to a lot more information than I would have. So, that said, there's a lot of issues, I think, about how we spend money in the DoD, but consider this. Right now, we spend more money every year on our drug problem than we do on the Department of Defense base budget.
Okay.
So that's sort of where my priorities go as a congressional leader. I'll look at each issue that arises and how we're addressing it. And then basically what I do is vote on funding. That's what the congressional leader does. From a foreign policy perspective, I think that one of the biggest issues that we're seeing is war-torn third world countries where these people have nothing to lose. In a country where you can afford to feed your family, where you're eating well and you have a sanitation infrastructure in place, it's people are happy and they're doing well. They're not running around fighting holy wars. I think a lot of these problems that we're experiencing with terrorism and their intense grasp on a religious ideology that is so damaging and hateful is based on a very extreme living environment that does not supply the basic needs: a good sanitation infrastructure that keeps disease down, clean water, good food, and a safe place to spend your time. If you don't have any of those things, this is what's going to happen. So we have a choice. We can actually start encouraging economic development, and they can get Coca-Cola and Big Macs.
Some people say, keep our money here, stop giving it to foreign aid.
I'm not saying you have to give them money, but there's a lot that other companies can do when they start setting up organizations in other countries where they're putting in infrastructure, where that is one thing. As much as I'm not a fan of Walmart because of their labor practices, when they set up facilities in third world countries, they put roads in, they put small business practices in for women. So women can make textiles in those areas and actually supply to the local Walmart. So those are all processes that we could encourage. You don't necessarily have to fund it. Corporations can do that all the time. And you actually create an environment that has an economic ladder where if you don't have clean water, I don't care. I mean, we've been funding giving clean water to Africa for decades. Why are we not drilling wells there? Instead of dumping water there, let's actually drill wells.
Teach you how to fish.
Exactly. And that's what we haven't done. And there's a lot of reasons I think that's intentional and by design at times, because it's a mechanism of control that keeps their economy in a place where we actually can decide what happens there.
I know every day I watch Donald Trump on TV. And you're not running against Trump. I'm going to ask you about Hillary next. What do you think about Trump? I have a specific Hillary question about the emails, but for Trump, is he a detriment? People call him the devil. People call him the savior. He's loud.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I don't really think about him. I'm not voting for him. But what I do think is that when you have a government that is highly dysfunctional and gridlocked, and history has shown this time and time again, people will turn to a far more tyrannical type of leadership because they're not seeing anything done. So they will turn to tyranny because they actually see progress there.
And you talked about the gridlock, and I'm glad you did, because if you get elected, there's going to be budget showdowns. I mean, we were following this for how many years?
Sure.
And I know you only one vote of 435, but what do you bring to the table? So when they're fighting, and the Republicans are going to do that, if you get elected, you're going to have a hostile Republican Congress who's going to stall the budget and play games and not pay the bills and shut things down. You're going to have McClelland over there with, don't pay attention, there's a puppet over here, don't look over here. What do you do?
Well, I will say this, that when the government shutdown happened, which Keith Rothfus voted for, and tried to do it again. Doing it the first time wasn't enough. He was actually one of the 18 that tried to do it again.
Pull Social Security, give old little lady, don't pull my check. What do you do?
It was 11 women in the Senate. Some were Republican, some were Democrat, that actually got the government up and running again. And John McCain actually came out and said, we have to thank the women for this. They were the ones that said, I've had enough.
Yes.
This is going to stop. So I do think that by nature, women tend to reach across the aisle a little bit more. There tends to be less pride of authorship.
Peacemaker.
And more about, can we fix this? I mean, I could never vote to shut down the government. I could never vote to hijack our nation's credit rating.
Because that shut down a lot of people. For those of you who remember this, we couldn't pay our bills. We got
$24 billion it cost us.
And truthfully, how do we get rid of the deficit? And it's a horrible question to ask someone, but we have this, what are we up to now? 20 trillion? 19 trillion? 21 trillion? How do we stop our spending? I always like to ask about this horrible word, fiscal responsibility. Are you in favor of putting in a bill that's going to say we have to balance the budget?
Of course.
Will it pass?
I doubt it, but I would definitely support a balanced budget amendment. And I mean, most of your local municipalities can't go into debt. They're not permitted.
We do.
So they have to put tax, like they have to deal with that. And it's appalling that our government doesn't. But what concerns me even more than our debt, and our debt is a problem, it is a national security issue.
Oh, yeah.
It affects our future and our children's future.
China rubber stamps us and we're owned.
Yeah.
People criticize the government going, well, half of our debt is serviced by China, if not more.
Sure. Saudi Arabia.
How do we take back authorship and ownership of this country?
Of our economy, absolutely. But the biggest problem we have is the $127 trillion in unfunded liabilities that lies on our balance sheet, which most of the time we don't even put on there.
Explain that to our viewers.
So with Medicare and Medicaid, for a number of reasons, people taking money out of it, as well as the actuarial assessments that we've done haven't been met, thanks to Alan Greenspan and some of the ridiculous things that the Fed has done keeping interest rates low. So when you put money into Social Security and that fund is assuming a 6% rate of return and you're not getting it because the Fed has interest rates so low, which is absurd, you're not getting the money you need. So the 75-year actuarial estimates for that are a problem. Now that's 75 years. There's a lot we can do to fix that, but we have to fix it. 2/3 of that $127 trillion, though, are Medicare and Medicaid cost growth.
So people like me who are in their 30s who are going to say, well, when I retire at 67 or 70, will I have a check?
Well, you'll have Social Security.
People
you will.
ask me, will it be what it is now?
But my concern is more Medicaid and Medicare. And one of the things that I want to do to resolve that is start attacking our medical errors. This is something I actually did in the private sector.
So for your background, I know you're a mother of 15. What did you do before you ran for Congress?
I worked in healthcare my whole life. So I did everything from...
That's where you have your passion.
Yeah, it's all healthcare. Okay. Healthcare and labor. Did drug and alcohol, small business, policy work, research. I've seen it from
grant writing.
Yeah, grant writing.
Okay.
But I want to attack the medical errors. Every day we kill 3 to 4 jumbo jets full of people in our healthcare system. And I always say, if 3 to 4 jumbo jets full of people fell out of the sky and killed everybody on board, would you get on a plane? The average person would not.
How do we kill them? What are we doing?
Medical errors, hospital-acquired infections, and medical errors.
Okay.
So accidents.
So how do we fix? Because sometimes accidents happen.
Sure.
I'm playing devil's advocate. How do we fix it?
There's actually a process that we've done in the private sector called root cause analysis and scientific problem solving. It's pretty simple. NASA uses it, and the Toyota production system and the Ford Motor Corporation use it. So this is not something that's sort of out there. This is just genuine process improvement. I've done it in the private sector, and we can definitely do it. I want to do it in the VA with a pilot project. start improving medical errors and hospital-acquired infections. So you look at Legionnaires. That was a huge issue. Keith Rothfuss's response to that was to put a bill in place that defunded the VA and punished executives and all this lunacy. It was absurd. It actually damages the system, because if you're afraid to be punished because you've identified problems, because somebody like Keith Rothfuss is saying that's the only solution I have is to, coddle people and blame people, you're not going to get anywhere. What he did actually solved no problem, created no solution, and developed no better process. No veteran is going to get better service as a result of that. We need more transparency. You cannot have transparency. When an elected official says, I want transparency, give us the blame-free environment that promotes it. You cannot have true transparency in a blame-ridden environment. If you are in a blame-ridden environment, you will hide things. It's human nature. So that has to happen. And we need to get rid of people like him that live their lives on blame.
I don't know offhand, but did Keith vote for any of the bailouts? We had major companies.
That was 2008. He wasn't in office yet. Yeah.
Are you in favor of those or against them?
You had to do that. The economic collapse.
People are on both sides.
No. That would have been fundamentally irresponsible. You would have had a massive economic collapse of global proportions if you wouldn't have stabilized those banks. You had to stabilize those banks. Now, the biggest problem was when we started joining them together and merging investment banks and commercial banks, creating what is literally too big to fail. That was a massive problem. And I don't know how you unscramble that egg. That was something that Bernie Sanders ran on. I really don't know logistically how you do that. I don't know how you go back and re-implement Glass-Steagall to stop that. I mean, we've sort of
almost having the recession, but that was less than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So people in this district are going to be afraid of what happens if I'm poor and there's another recession.
Yeah.
And you can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but how do you...
No, we're in uncharted territory on domestic policy and economics, because we had Glass-Steagall to stabilize us for 70 some years. We never had, after the 29 crash, we had small recessions.
But explain to our viewers what Glass-Steagall is.
Yeah, Glass-Steagall is the law that we put in place that separates commercial banks and investment banks. So a commercial bank, which is where you have your mortgage and your savings account and that basic stuff that everyday middle class people have, they have access to the discount window, which actually gives them emergency funds if they get in trouble. They're insured by the FDIC. They're protecting everyday people. With investment banks, they did not have access to those things because they're gambling.
Right.
You're playing on Wall Street.
It's a big gamble.
You're gambling. You don't get access to all these security measures. You guys want to gamble and horse race on Wall Street, have a good time, have fun. What Glass-Steagall, the abolishing Glass-Steagall did, which Bill Clinton actually did in the end of 1999, was it merged those two.
Right.
So now a security that was started like a home mortgage that started in a commercial bank can cross that sort of chasm into an investment bank and be transformed into a security that's traded on the open market. The problem with that was there was this information chasm in between the two. They had never been putting assets back and forth across, so you lost all of this information in between. And what we should have done, what Alan Greenspan should have advocated for, and Hank Paulson and all those people that screwed this up, what they should have done is advocated that you have a document process that says this home loan, when it crosses this chasm, the derivative must follow the security. So you can see, wait a second, this is a guy that makes $60,000 a year, he bought a $400,000 house, he's probably gonna go bankrupt, he's gonna default. And what happened was those derivatives didn't follow across that chasm, and we bundled 100 home loans, and statistics say 2% of home loans may default. So if you bundle 100 of them, you're actually supposedly decreasing risk using that math. That's not what happened. You started having 5, 6, 7, 8% of homes just crashing. And Moody's was rating them badly. Now, they knew they were rating them badly, but they had an excuse. They didn't have the transparency of the derivative to say, well, wait a second. This makes no sense on paper. Like, these are subprime mortgages. You're lumping them together. You're insuring them to keep them off your balance sheet, which was another problem. AIG was insuring all those.
And people are
so they all went
murder as it's happening. Everybody.
And the fact is the whole system was dysfunctional. There was no laws to stop it. Alan Greenspan was promoting it. The Fed was promoting it. Hank Paulson was promoting it. Everybody was making tons and tons of money off of this. And nobody was really concerned about when the well dried up, and when it did. you set all of these banks who were over leveraged. You're allowed to be leveraged. It's $12 lent out for every dollar you have on hand. They were leveraged like 35, 45 to 1. I think Lehman was at 45 to 1. And the reason they got away with that is because those assets were insured, so it didn't count on their leverage.
And they weren't worried about it.
And they weren't worried about it. So when they went under, they literally had no capital reserves. So the only way you could stabilize the bleeding and get these banks to stop crashing, so commercial banks you didn't lose your mortgage or your savings account, was to do the capital infusion.
Now I know you mentioned Wall Street, and is it true Rothschild has a lot of backing financially?
Yes. Tons.
How do you feel about that, and how do you want to address that? Has Wall Street given you a single dollar?
No.
And they're not in our district. So my question to you would be, why would a state away be giving how many millions of dollars?
Yeah.
How important? What is he voting for? What do you think is happening?
He's on the Financial Services Committee. He actually did an article in the, the Beaver County Times, talking about how he was concerned about disadvantaged Wall Street banks. And we were jokingly going to run around the district, with a camera looking for the disadvantaged Wall Street banks, because there just aren't any. You have you have your regular commercial banks, but a lot of small mom and pop banks.
And this district, I know last time was hugely, there was like $5 million to him, and it was $2 million to Critz. It was a win.
No, actually, Critz raised more than Keith Rothfuss did, but the outside funding that came in was massive on both sides. But Critz actually outraised Keith, not by much, but he did. But the outside money that just poured in, this was the most expensive congressional race in the country.
I remember that.
It was insane. Yeah.
And if you take back the D and this becomes Democrat again, it's going to make national news.
Sure.
Because we are a gerrymandered district. You look at this district as this weird strip. We used to be 2 counties, now we're this weird strip.
Yeah, it's very strange.
So for closing, any last minute comments you have for your viewers? Our viewers in Pittsburgh and in the Johnstown area, when they ask, who is Erin McClelland? Who are you?
I'm a blue-collar girl from a great steel town that's lived in this district my whole life. I was educated in Western Pennsylvania. I'm a Western Pennsylvania native, unlike my opponent. And I think the one thing that I've gotten a lot of credit for, other than being smart, knowing the policies that affect my district, but being a really, really hard worker. I just never stop, and I love it. I love this gig. I don't think that my opponent likes it at all. Matter of fact, I know he doesn't. He doesn't go in public. He doesn't communicate with the constituents, and he's not a real worker. And that's what I want. These are working class people in working class blue collar towns, and they need somebody that's going to work as hard as they do to help them and get them the resources they need and the support they need. And that's what I want to do.
Well, there you have it, folks. This is Erin McClelland running for the 12th Congressional District. We hope you enjoyed our show. Erin, you are thrilled to have on the show. It's very rare we get congressional candidates who won a primary twice. Wish you the best of luck in November, and God bless you.
Thank you.